The Germans believed their codes were unbreakable. Every message that crossed the airwaves, encrypted by the legendary Enigma, was a whisper of invincibility. They trusted it so completely, they used it to command U-boats, plan air raids, and deliver the secrets of the Reich itself. To them, Enigma was perfection. A machine that turned language into mystery, and mystery into power. But across the Atlantic, a small team of American cryptanalysts sat in dimly lit rooms, surrounded by cigarette smoke, silence, and sleepless determination. They had no fancy uniforms, no medals, just pencils, typewriters, and minds sharp enough to slice through impossibility. What they were about to do would tilt the balance of World War II itself, because one night, in a moment that still stuns historians today, the unthinkable happened. Enigma began to speak. How? How did ordinary men and women, armed only with logic and sheer obsession, crack the code that the Nazis swore was unbreakable? What secrets did they uncover that even Hitler never imagined could be stolen? Stay with me, because this is the story of how the Americans broke into the German mind itself and changed the war forever. The code that should never break. It began with arrogance. Beautiful, terrible arrogance, the kind that blinds empires and dooms them in silence. In 1939, as Europe trembled beneath the march of German boots, one machine stood above all others as the pride of the Reich, the Enigma. Polished brass, smooth keys, electric rotors clicking like a heartbeat, it was the crown jewel of Nazi communication. Each press of a key transformed a letter into another, creating a cipher that changed with every touch. 26 letters, endless combinations. The Germans called it flawless. Every morning, radio operators in grey uniforms carried orders wrapped in Enigma's protection. U-boat positions, air raid coordinates, top-secret commands from Berlin itself. The Wehrmacht trusted it completely. Unbreakable, they said, and believed it with fanatical certainty. But while the Reich placed its faith in a machine, somewhere across the ocean, in the quiet corridors of the U.S. Navy's cryptologic division, a different kind of war was beginning. One fought not with guns, but with thought. The air smelled of ink and old paper. Typewriters clacked through the night. A single bulb flickered over tables covered in code sheets and intercepted German messages that looked like gibberish to anyone but the obsessed few who studied them. Among them sat a young mathematician named Genevieve "Ginny" Knight, barely 30, brilliant and invisible in a world run by men who wore uniforms she would never be allowed to wear. But her mind was sharper than any officer's blade. She had joined the Navy's Communications Intelligence section for one reason, to prove that no code was divine. Every morning, she received streams of intercepted German traffic, blocks of letters without spaces, PF qubit XJTRK, HZNJV, meaningless to most. But to Ginny, they were alive, patterns dancing, numbers breathing. Her pencil moved fast, jotting frequencies, marking coincidences. She saw rhythm where others saw chaos. Still, Enigma was different. It shifted daily, its wiring changed by secret keys known only to the Germans. The cipher moved like a living organism. To chase it was to chase smoke. For months, the Americans failed. Every attempt ended in frustration. Every guess collapsed under the weight of Enigma's complexity. And yet, something didn't add up. Ginny noticed repetition. Certain letters appeared at intervals too precise to be random. Someone in the German ranks, somewhere, was lazy. She couldn't prove it, but she felt it. The kind of instinct born from staring too long into the impossible. Then came the message. A strange burst of radio traffic, longer than usual, sent from a U-boat off the coast of France. The signal was weak, fading. It carried an Enigma-encoded order. But the message header contained something unusual. A repeated call sign. A slip, human error. Ginny leaned closer to her receiver, eyes narrowing. She cross-referenced it with an earlier intercept from the same station. Identical pattern. The same operator. The same signature mistake. The Germans' faith in Enigma had made them careless. That night, as rain hammered against the window panes of the Navy building, Ginny ran her analysis again. Hours passed. Cigarettes burned down to stubs. Around midnight she whispered, "You made a mistake, Captain." And in that moment she realized something extraordinary. The code wasn't the only thing alive. The men using it were too. And humans always left fingerprints. Her findings reached Commander Lawrence Taylor, head of Naval Communications Intelligence. A quiet man with eyes that missed nothing. He studied Ginny's report, tapped the page once and said, "If you're right, you just found the first crack." From that night, the mood in the room changed. Every intercepted Enigma message carried the weight of possibility. The Americans began sharing fragments with their British counterparts at Bletchley Park. Though cooperation was delicate, trust between allies was thin in those early days. The British had been wrestling with Enigma long before the Americans, led by minds like Alan Turing and Gordon Welchman. But Britain was drowning in war. The Luftwaffe had scorched the skies above London, and the Atlantic ran red with sunken ships. They needed help. Taylor sent a coded cable to London. "We may have found a pattern. Possible operator weakness. Request cross-check with Bletchley results." Across the sea, in a damp English estate humming with generators, a message was decoded by a young clerk and placed on Turing's desk. He read it once, then twice. "Americans," he muttered. "Interesting." For months, the British had been breaking selected Enigma variants, mostly from the Luftwaffe, but the naval Enigma remained nearly invulnerable. If the Americans had seen something they hadn't, it could mean a turning point. Weeks later, a liaison team arrived in Washington. Ginny was there to meet them, Turing's assistant, cryptographer Hugh Alexander, and a quiet engineer named Dilwyn Knox. They spoke in hushed tones over stacks of intercepted signals. Equations filled chalkboards. English humor clashed with American precision. But beneath it all, a single goal bound them together, to make Enigma bleed. And yet even as progress flickered to life, the danger outside grew darker. The Germans began adjusting Enigma's internal rotors, adding a fourth wheel for their naval communications. Overnight, every breakthrough collapsed. It was as if the enemy had heard their whispers. Ginny's team was back to square one. Days blurred into weeks. Hope thinned. Men snapped under pressure. Others simply walked away. But Ginny refused. She lived in the hum of the decoding machines, in the rhythm of impossible puzzles. Every new intercept brought her closer to something she couldn't name, but could feel. Then, one morning, she found it. A tiny note scribbled in German at the bottom of a U-boat transmission. It wasn't supposed to be there. "Heil dem Führer," it read. "Hail to the leader." A personal flourish. And in that carelessness, in that devotion, lay the flaw she needed. By cross-referencing that phrase with earlier Enigma messages, Ginny isolated a recurring encryption pattern. A linguistic fingerprint that connected multiple transmissions to the same operator. Within hours, she had reconstructed part of a daily key sequence. It wasn't much, just fragments of a wiring order, but it was enough to feed into the early American bomb, a mechanical codebreaker modeled after the British design. The machine roared to life. Rotors spun, gears clanked. The room filled with the smell of ozone and oil. For a long time, nothing happened. Then a small light blinked, once, twice. Then a steady pulse. Ginny froze. The code wasn't just moving, it was unraveling. Commander Taylor stepped forward, silent. The room watched as the printer spat out letters that finally made sense. German words, real ones, naked for the first time in years. Convoy Nordsee Angriff, convoy. North Sea, attack. A chill swept through the team. The impossible had happened. But before they could celebrate, the teletype screamed again. Another intercept. This one urgent, encrypted with a new Enigma setting. The Germans were changing their codes faster now, reacting to something. Did they suspect? Had someone leaked? Taylor's voice broke the silence. "We can't stop now. If they know, we've got hours before they lock us out again." Ginny looked up from her desk, exhaustion and exhilaration battling in her eyes. "Then we'll break it again." Outside, the city slept under blackout curtains. Inside, the war's quietest battle raged on. One fought not with tanks or bullets, but with brains, breath, and breaking hearts, and as dawn crept through the windows, Ginny's pencil stopped mid-note. A telegram had arrived from London. 6 words only. U-boat convoys rerouting north. How? She stared at it, heart pounding. The British didn't know yet. The Germans didn't either, but somehow someone did, and that meant there was a leak. The silent war of minds' rain beat against the windows of the Washington code room like a metronome of anxiety. Ginny Knight sat motionless, staring at the telegram from London. 6 words, sharp, accusing, impossible to ignore. U-boat convoys rerouting north. How? Her pulse quickened. The British thought they had the leak. The Germans had changed their codes overnight, and somehow both were staring in America's direction. Commander Taylor's jaw clenched as he reread the cable. They're moving their ships before we even decrypt. Someone's feeding them. The room fell silent. Every man and woman looked at one another, searching for guilt that wasn't there. Ginny wanted to speak, but the weight of that silence pressed on her chest. The unthinkable had happened. Information from their secret project was escaping. Over the next days, suspicion spread like smoke. Every intercepted message was now a potential trap. The once thrilling hum of decoding machines turned into a dirge of paranoia. A few of the men whispered that the British were testing them, setting them up to see if America could be trusted. Others feared the truth, that a German sympathizer had slipped into their ranks. Ginny drowned herself in work, hoping logic would chase away the unease. But it didn't. Each message she decrypted felt like it was watching her back. Then, a discovery. One of the radio operators had logged an intercept an hour earlier than scheduled, using an unauthorized channel. Taylor ordered an internal audit. Records were checked, logs compared, messages tracked. The man responsible, Lieutenant Harris, was pulled aside for questioning. He swore it was routine, an innocent mistake. Just a timing error, he said. But Ginny noticed something. The handwriting in his logs didn't match his earlier entries. Subtle differences, like a right-handed man forcing himself to write left-handed. That night, long after everyone had gone, she stayed back, flipping through Harris's logs under the weak glow of a desk lamp. There, hidden among the frequency tables, was a small sequence of letters she'd never seen before. FTH. 3 characters, repeated like a signature. Not part of any code, not part of any system, but consistent. She turned to the radio intercepts. Same thing. FTH at the bottom of several copies. She thought it was a coincidence until she found it again on one of the transmissions sent to London. Her heart pounded. Whoever had leaked their decrypts had marked them, and FTH was his ghostly calling card. The next morning she brought the evidence to Taylor. He looked at it for a long time, then quietly locked the papers in his drawer. "You've done well," he said, but his tone wasn't reassuring. "From now on, no one works alone. No intercept leaves this room without my approval." The tension grew unbearable. The Americans could no longer share everything with Bletchley Park. Cooperation turned cautious. Every telegram now carried 2 meanings, what it said and what it didn't. The alliance was fracturing at the edges, and the enemy was listening, yet the war outside didn't wait. German U-boats were slaughtering convoys in the Atlantic. Dozens of ships vanished beneath the waves every week. The Allies were desperate. Without decrypted Enigma traffic, they were blind. Somewhere out there, under cold grey seas, men were dying for the silence inside this building. On the 3rd week of lockdown, Ginny was awakened by a phone call in the middle of the night. "Report to Station Hypo. Priority red. Hypo, the U.S. Navy's Pacific Cryptologic branch." She'd never worked there. She packed her coat, her notes, and boarded the overnight flight. When she arrived, the air in the Hawaiian bunker was thick with sweat and caffeine. Machines lined the walls, their metallic clatter echoing like artillery. She expected chaos, but what she saw was awe. On a side table, a decoded message lay open. German Enigma traffic, but from the Pacific Theater. That wasn't supposed to exist. Enigma was a European weapon, but here it was, alive and transmitting off Japanese frequencies. A naval officer, Commander Rochefort, approached her. "You're Knight," The one from Washington? She nodded. Then you'll want to see this. He handed her a sheet of paper filled with translated German. It spoke of supply transfers, of naval routes, but also something new, a reference to Japanese encryption methods. The realization struck her like lightning. The Germans weren't just communicating among themselves anymore. They were sharing code systems with Japan. Two enemies, one cipher network. If that were true, the Allies were fighting not one code war, but two, interlocked, feeding each other. Break one and you could glimpse the other. The Americans called it traffic fusion. The British didn't believe it existed. But Ginny knew this was their chance. If they could cross-reference German naval traffic with Japanese signals, they might find overlaps, shared keys, mirrored structures. It was a new way in. She worked without sleep. Comparing old Enigma intercepts from Europe to the Pacific transmissions, she traced timing patterns, frequency overlaps, identical operator signatures. Slowly and possibly, she began to see symmetry, a rhythm between continents. Then came the message that changed everything. A U-boat transmission from the mid-Atlantic appeared identical to one intercepted near Truck Lagoon. Same encryption header. Same key change timestamp. 2 oceans, 1 system. The implications were terrifying. The Germans had extended Enigma's reach into the Pacific. It meant Hitler's secrets, and Japan's could now travel through the same cryptologic bloodstream. Taylor flew in 2 days later. He stood beside her as the decoding machine clattered through the night. If we break this link, he said quietly, we'll hear both of them. Hours passed. The machine slowed, printed, stopped. Ginny reached for the paper strip, hands trembling. English letters formed clear as daylight. Operation Tanigawa proceeding. Japanese liaison confirms delivery of codes. Taylor exhaled sharply. They had proof. The Germans had shared Enigma modifications with the Japanese Navy. But before they could act, before they could even send confirmation to London, the room went dark. Power failure. Then an alarm. A technician shouted, "Transmission spike." "Someone's broadcasting from inside." A hidden transmitter had activated within the compound. Someone was sending their decrypted message back into the ether. The guards rushed in, tearing open desks, ripping apart walls. The broadcast stopped within seconds, but the damage was done. Whoever was inside had warned the enemy. Ginny stood frozen in the flickering emergency light. She looked at Taylor, and for the first time, she saw fear in his eyes. "They know," he whispered. That night, every decrypted word became poison. Outside, across the Atlantic, Enigma changed again. A 5th rotor was added to the naval systems. All progress lost. It was as if the enemy had erased months of work in a single heartbeat. Back in Washington, Ginny sat alone, staring at the blank teletype roll. The silence pressed in around her like a grave. She thought about the letters, FTH, and the man who had left them like scars across their work. Somewhere, someone had been listening all along. And then, as the midnight clock struck, a new message came through the static. It wasn't from Germany. It wasn't from Japan. It was from an unidentified transmitter, close, too close. Just 3 words, sent in perfect Morse. "Stop decoding now." The line went dead. The hidden hands. America joins the cipher chase. The message, those 3 chilling words, haunted Ginny long after the line went dead. "Stop decoding now." It wasn't a command from Berlin or Tokyo. It came from somewhere inside the United States, inside their network, inside their war. For the next 48 hours, the code rooms of Washington fell into controlled panic. Security doubled, doors locked. Every piece of intercepted German traffic was sealed under guard. Commander Taylor barely slept. He paced the corridors like a man chasing a ghost, and that ghost had their every move memorized. The investigation led nowhere. The transmitter that had sent the warning had vanished. The only clue was the timing. It came moments after their first confirmation that the Germans had shared Enigma with Japan. Someone didn't want that connection exposed. Someone who had access to both Allied channels. Across the Atlantic, London grew impatient. Bletchley Park's replies turned sharper. Progress? One message read, Another colder, "Have you compromised the codes?" Ginny read them in silence, feeling the divide widening between allies who no longer trusted each other. The codebreakers on both sides were supposed to be united against a common enemy. Now it felt as if they were decoding each other. Taylor finally decided to act. He summoned Ginny to his office late one night. The windows were darkened, the air heavy with smoke. On his desk lay two sealed folders, one marked Bletchley, the other IPO. "They've decided to merge operations," he said. "Joint project, one code-breaking command between the US and Britain. You'll be our liaison." Ginny hesitated. "After everything? They think they can trust us?" Taylor's eyes softened. "They don't, but they need us. The U-boats are winning again. If we don't reopen Enigma, the Atlantic will belong to Germany before summer ends." She nodded. Duty over fear, logic over doubt. It was the only way forward. When Ginny arrived at Bletchley Park, the contrast stunned her. The manor looked like something out of a forgotten century. Stone walls, fog-covered lawns, the faint hum of generators echoing from the basement. But beneath that calm exterior, the heart of modern war pulsed. Thousands of operators, typists, mathematicians, each fighting a battle that no one outside would ever see. Alan Turing met her in Hut 8. He was lean, awkward, his fingers stained with ink. "So you're the American," he said flatly, eyes flicking to her stack of notes. "Let's hope your brains work better than your country's secrecy." Ginny met his stare evenly. "And let's hope your machines are as clever as your reputation." For a moment, silence. Then unexpectedly, Turing smiled, a thin, almost imperceptible curve. "Good, you'll do." Together they began cross-analyzing the intercepted Enigma-Japan hybrid codes. Turing's logical elegance met Ginny's instinctive pattern recognition. They argued constantly about wiring orders, statistical assumptions, even the meaning of silence between radio bursts. Yet beneath every disagreement grew an unspoken respect. Days turned into nights, coffee cups stacked high beside typewriters. Turing's machine, the bomb, rattled endlessly in the corner, searching for clues among a billion permutations. Ginny worked by ear, listening to intercepted Morse transmissions through static, jotting timings and letter frequencies. Somewhere between the chaos and the rhythm, she felt the code's pulse returning. Then came a night that would change everything. A fresh intercept arrived from a German naval base in Lorient. Ginny read the header and froze. The call sign matched one from months before, the same operator who had written Heil dem Führer in his messages. Her pencil trembled as she began to transcribe. Each sequence felt familiar. When she ran the letters through the bomb's settings, the machine hesitated, clicked once, and then, miraculously, stopped. The output strip slid into her hands. Turing peered over her shoulder. His eyes widened. "It's in plain German," he whispered. The message was short but devastating. "Convoy 91, Zielpunkt Halifax." Convoy 91, destination Halifax. A massive Allied supply fleet. If they didn't act immediately, dozens of ships, thousands of lives, would vanish beneath the Atlantic. But there was a problem. The message had been sent hours earlier. The convoy was already moving. They had no time to confirm, no time to trace the U-boats. Acting on an unverified decrypt could expose their secret. That Enigma had been broken again. Taylor, connected through a secure line from Washington, demanded proof. "Are you certain?" Ginny's voice shook. "Certain enough to save lives." There was silence. Then finally Taylor said, "Then save them." At dawn, British command rerouted Convoy 91 through icy northern waters. The U-boats waited in the south, unaware. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then reports came in, depth charge explosions, sonar contacts, 2 submarines sunk, no Allied losses. They had done it. The first joint decrypt had saved an entire convoy, but victory carried a hidden sting. Hours later, another message from Germany surfaced. This one encrypted in an entirely new key. A new model of Enigma had appeared, one none of them had seen before. The factory markings in the header told a chilling story. Enigma U. A version used exclusively by the Kriegsmarine's High Command. No captured machine existed. No blueprints. No weaknesses. Turing exhaled slowly. They've realized. They're rebuilding the walls. Ginny leaned back, exhaustion and dread mingling in her chest. Then we'll tear them down again. But the strain was showing. Each breakthrough came at the cost of secrecy, and somewhere inside this growing alliance, someone was still watching. A week later, an anonymous envelope appeared on Turing's desk. No return address, no fingerprints. Inside, a single sheet of paper with 6 typed words. You saved the convoy. They noticed. No one claimed responsibility. That night, Ginny stood outside the manor, the fog thick as smoke. She thought of the leak in Washington, of FTH, of the transmitter that had warned them. The pieces didn't fit, unless they were never meant to. Unless someone wanted them to chase shadows while the real spy operated in plain sight. As she turned to go inside, she noticed a light flickering in the hut across the lawn. Hut 6, the Luftwaffe section. It was long past working hours, yet someone was still inside. She walked closer, heart beating faster with every step. Through the window, she saw a man hunched over a desk, typing furiously. The light glinted off something metallic near his wrist, a watch engraved with 3 faint letters. She squinted, barely able to make them out. F, T, H, the room's lamp went out. And in the sudden dark, Ginny realized the enemy she'd been chasing across oceans was standing no more than 30 feet away. The fog clung to the English night like breath against glass. Ginny stood frozen, her eyes locked on the darkened hut. Whoever had been inside was gone now, but the faint smell of cigarette smoke still drifted from the window. The same brand Harris used in Washington. Coincidence or a connection? She slipped into the hut quietly. Papers lay scattered across the desk, an unfinished typewritten report still warm in the carriage. She read the first line and felt her stomach turn. Subject: unauthorized transmission analysis, American collaboration risk. It was a report to London, not from it. Someone had been feeding the British government selective information about the Americans, possibly twisting it to make them look untrustworthy. On the bottom of the page, 3 letters appeared like a curse. Afeach, the sound of boots outside jolted her. She slid the page into her coat and ducked out the side door, heart hammering. When she reached Hut 8, Turing was still awake, bent over his machine. She placed the paper on his desk. Someone here is sending reports against us. The same mark, FTH. He read it, expression unreadable. If this is true, he said softly, then the enemy isn't only in Berlin. For the next several days, Bletchley moved like a wound-up spring. Security checks doubled. Messages between Washington and London were rerouted through cipher relays. Still, transmissions leaked, tiny details appearing in German intercepts that no one outside their alliance should have known. It was like watching ink spread through water. Every secret they held bled outward. Then the breakthrough came from the least expected place, a captured German U-boat, its codebooks miraculously intact. The British called it the U-559 incident. 2 young sailors had given their lives diving into a sinking submarine to retrieve the precious documents. Ginny stood beside Turing when the first pages arrived, still damp with seawater. Among them were Enigma rotor settings for the naval system, ones that could unlock the new Enigma U. Turing smiled faintly. Now we can hear them again. For the first time in months, the bomber machines roared to life with renewed fury. The air filled with the whirring of gears, the electric hum of calculation. Day and night blurred together as the team fed the new settings into the machines. Every decrypted word was a step back into the mind of the enemy, and then one morning the unthinkable happened. The printer stuttered, coughed, and began spitting legible German. Ginny leaned in, eyes wide. Angriff vorbereiten. Operation Hydra bestätigt. Prepare for attack. Operation Hydra confirmed. The name sent chills down Turing's spine. Hydra codename for a planned offensive across the North Atlantic. The Germans were preparing a massive U-boat ambush, larger than anything before. If the Allies didn't act fast, the entire supply line from America to Britain would collapse. But there was more. A second line of the decrypted message, American cipher rooms identified. Source FTH confirms weakness. The room fell silent. Turing read it twice before speaking. They know about us. They know about you. Taylor, listening from Washington via secure line, could barely breathe. That you're saying the Germans know who's breaking their codes? Ginny swallowed hard. Not just that. They know how. And they think one of us told them. The horror of it sank in. Somewhere between the messages, the transmissions, the alliances, a secret had turned into a weapon. Someone had betrayed them to the Germans directly. Orders came from above, continue decoding, but relocate operations. Within hours, Ginny and her team were moved to a secluded manor north of Oxford, codenamed Station Black. It was quieter there, isolated, away from the bustle of Bletchley. The perfect place for focus, or for secrets to disappear. In the new code room, she and Turing worked in near silence. Every tick of the bomb felt like a heartbeat counting down. The messages coming in were urgent now, desperate German transmissions about the Atlantic offensive. Each one brought them closer to understanding Hydra, but the pieces didn't fit. The U-boats were coordinating maneuvers that defied logic, turning in patterns that only made sense if someone on the Allied side was feeding them information in real time. One evening, Turing handed Ginny a small slip of paper. "Intercepted 20 minutes ago," he said. "Same hand, same cipher header." She unfolded it and froze. The message wasn't from Germany. It was addressed to Berlin, and it came from inside England. The text was simple: American section relocating to Black Site. Proceed accordingly. Someone knew their every move. That night, Ginny returned to her quarters, mind racing. She thought of the hut, the watch, the initials, FTH, the handwriting in Harris's logs, the transmitter in Washington. Every thread led to one point, but could it be true? Could the spy have followed them here? A sudden knock at her door broke the thought. Turing stood there, his face pale. "Come," he said. "You need to see this." Downstairs in the code room, the printer was still running. The paper rolled across the floor. Dozens of decrypted messages, one after another, each stamped with the same time signature. "Look," Turing said, pointing. "These messages aren't new. They're repeats. Someone is resending old traffic." "Why?" she asked. "To confuse the network. To bury the real transmissions." She stared at the machine, realization dawning. "They're masking Hydra. The real attack coordinates are hidden somewhere among these duplicates." Hours passed as they cross-checked every intercepted line. The false messages followed a rhythm, but one stood out. A single string of letters, slightly out of pattern. Ginny circled it. "This one," she said. "It's not a repeat. It's a live code." They decoded it by hand, sweat dripping, hands trembling. The result chilled the room. "Hydra begins tomorrow, 0400 hours. Primary target, Halifax, the same convoy route they had saved months before." Ginny grabbed the phone. "We have to warn command." Before she could dial, the lights flickered. Then the power cut. The bomb fell silent. The manor plunged into darkness. Through the window, a single headlight flickered outside, the shape of a car idling in the rain. A figure stepped out, coat glistening, hat pulled low. Ginny moved to the door, but Turing grabbed her arm. "No," he whispered. "If Eft is here, they already know we've found them." The phone rang in the dark. Once, twice, 3 times. Turing lifted the receiver slowly. Static filled the line. Then faintly a voice, low, deliberate, unmistakably familiar. "Clever girl," it said. Ginny's blood ran cold. The line went dead. Outside, the car was gone. Only the rain remained, falling softly over a war fought in silence, where victory meant nothing if no one lived to tell how they'd earned it. And somewhere, across the Atlantic, the German Enigma machine clicked once more, ready to speak again. Victory in silence. The rain had stopped by morning, but the air inside Station Black felt heavier than ever, thick with fear, with the scent of damp wool and sleepless minds. Ginny hadn't spoken since the phone call. Turing watched her from across the room, eyes full of questions neither dared to voice. Whoever Eftech was, he wasn't just a mole. He was close, close enough to know their every move, their every success, even the sound of Ginny's voice. At dawn, Taylor's voice crackled through the line from Washington. "We've intercepted more traffic from Hydra. The attack begins within 24 hours. We need the location of the U-boat wolf packs now." Ginny stared at the faded ink on the decoded sheets. Each fragment whispered part of the truth, but never the whole. "They've buried the coordinates," she murmured. "Hidden inside mirrored transmissions. They're playing a shell game, and we're already behind." Turing rubbed his temples, pacing the floor. "There's a key pattern here. We're missing it. These duplicates aren't random. They form something, a meta-sequence." He began scribbling equations, his handwriting urgent, uneven. Ginny moved beside him, her fingers tracing the repeating ciphers across the printouts. She stopped. "Every duplicate message is off by one letter." He looked at her, puzzled. "One," she repeated. "Each false transmission shifts the encryption by one position, like a metronome. What if the coordinates are hidden not in the words, but in the difference between them?" They recalculated the data, aligning the letters from every duplicate message. Slowly, painfully, a grid formed. And there, in the negative space between them, emerged a set of numbers: 54 north, 36 west. "The Atlantic," Turing whispered. "That's the strike zone. That's where Hydra begins." Ginny exhaled shakily. "We can stop it. If we get this to Washington in time." She didn't finish. The door to the code room opened. A shadow filled the frame. It was Commander Taylor, exhausted, rain-soaked, standing in person. "You won't need to send it," he said quietly. "I'm already here." For a moment, disbelief. "You flew across the Atlantic?" Turing asked. Taylor nodded. "I couldn't trust the lines. Too many ears listening." But Ginny's instincts screamed something else. His arrival was too perfect, too sudden. "When did you leave Washington?" she asked. 36 hours ago, her mind calculated automatically. The Hydra intercepts had begun 38 hours ago. The same moment he left, she forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Then you've missed quite a show." Taylor moved to the decoding table, his boots echoing softly on the stone floor. He picked up a decrypt, scanning the text. "You found the coordinates?" "Yes," Turing said, unaware of the chill in Ginny's stare. 54 north, 36 west. If we move fast, we can..." Taylor interrupted. "We'll move immediately." He turned to the operator. "Transmit to Admiralty Command. Full priority clearance." Ginny stepped forward. "Wait, we haven't verified if the Germans changed their cipher this morning. If the coordinates are shifted even by one letter..." Taylor's voice hardened. "We don't have time for doubt." Turing hesitated, torn between logic and authority. The operator began typing the transmission. Ginny's pulse thundered in her ears. Something was wrong. Taylor's coat was still damp, but his shoes were dry. He hadn't come from outside. She moved closer, her voice low. "Where did you really come from, sir?" He didn't answer. The radio operator stopped typing, sensing the tension. Taylor turned slowly, his face calm, almost kind. "You always were too clever, Miss Knight." The realization hit like a physical blow. The voice on the phone, the one that called her clever girl. Turing froze, understanding at last. "My God," he whispered. "You're Effie." Taylor smiled, a sad, weary smile. "Not quite. FTH was a project long before I was part of it. I just continued it." "Why?" Ginny demanded. "Because the war you're fighting isn't as simple as codes and nations," he said softly. "London keeps secrets from Washington. Washington hides truths from London. And someone had to make sure neither side destroyed the other with arrogance by giving information to the enemy." Turing's voice trembled with fury. "By controlling what they knew," Taylor replied. "The Germans were predictable. The Allies weren't. You can't imagine what would have happened if both sides broke every code. Total chaos. I maintained balance." Ginny shook her head, disbelief turning to rage. "You cost lives?" He looked at her with genuine sorrow. "I saved more than you'll ever know." Before anyone could move, he reached into his coat. A glint of steel. But Ginny was faster. The pistol from the drawer cracked once, deafening in the stone room. Taylor staggered, a look of surprise frozen on his face. He fell without a word. The silence afterward felt endless. Turing sank into a chair, his hands trembling. "It's over," he said, voice hollow. Ginny stared at the body, at the man who had led them, taught them, betrayed them. "No," she whispered. "It's not," because on Taylor's wrist the same letters gleamed beneath the blood, FTH, and beneath it engraved deeper, Section Hydra. She lifted his sleeve. Inside the lining of his coat was a hidden telegram, an unsent message written in cipher. Turing decrypted it in seconds. It wasn't German. It wasn't British. It was American. Addressed to Naval Intelligence, D.C., the text read, "Hydra compromised. Initiate Operation Blacklight." Ginny stared at the words. Blacklight? What is that? Turing's face drained of color. "It's an override protocol. A full code purge. Every Enigma channel will reset. If they trigger it, everything we've decrypted, all of it, will vanish into noise. Then we'll lose the war," she said. The operator's radio crackled suddenly. "Incoming from Washington," he called. "Urgent." Message reads, "Confirm Blacklight authorization." Ginny's voice broke. "They think he's still alive." Outside, engines roared, the sound of approaching jeeps. British command, alerted by the earlier transmission. They would find Taylor's body, the gun, the blood, and the decoded coordinates. They'd see betrayal, not salvation. She turned to Turing, desperate. "If we stay, they'll bury everything. The truth, the work, us." He nodded once, grimly. "Then we don't stay." Together they grabbed the Hydra decrypts, the code sheets, the intercepted notes. The rain began again as they slipped through the manor's back doors into the woods. Behind them, Station Black lit up with headlights and shouting voices. For miles, they walked in silence. Only when the first hint of dawn touched the horizon did Ginny speak. "If Blacklight activates, Enigma wins." Turing looked toward the rising sun, its light cold and pale. "Then we must stop the signal before it reaches Washington." "How?" she asked. He turned to her, eyes dark but certain. "By breaking the last code, our own." And somewhere, deep within the static of the Atlantic transmissions, the Enigma rotors turned once more, as if listening.